right. Thank you. And of course, if you get to see Dinosaur Jr., you will recognize one of the members of Folk Implosion as being one of the formative members of Dinosaur Jr., originally called Dinosaur, but then they were going to get sued by some other people who were calling themselves Dinosaur. All right, everybody, let's get right to it. And we're going to go to the news notes for the genetically superior and check it out now. Iran, Trump signs. Yes, Trump signs the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran. He did this last night, just after we finished the show. He was at the G7. And there you go. The 14-point agreement was concluded while the U.S. president was visiting Versailles and has already entered force. Okay. The question is, has it really? So Donald Trump was doing his signature thing. We saw it was very exciting. There you go. Largest signature on the planet next to John Hancock. I thought it was... Is that a napkin? What is that? I'm not quite sure, but at least everybody can see it. And he was probably told to make sure you sign things real big. A lot of politicians are told that so that the cameras can get it in view. So thank you, RT, for that. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed on Wednesday that the text of the memorandum had been officially finalized and signed by both sides. Trump signed the document while attending a dinner alongside French President Mr. Jupiter himself, Emmanuel Macron, on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Okay, right on. Cool. Now, although Trump is looking very ghostly there, looks like he's in the Hall of Presidents at Disney World, very robotic, that sort of thing. No problem. Everything's cool, Donald. You're not a puppet of Israel in any way whatsoever. He's starting to push back a little bit. Or is he? Iran, in essence, gets to declare victory now. Of course. Because, as we said, nothing's going to stop the flow. Because if the flow stops, Iran will be successful in shutting down the world economy as a response to Donald Trump's aggression. So, as we see here, a lot of people are noting, you got it, Iran declares victory over U.S. The newly signed Memorandum of Understanding is a record of U.S. failure, Tehran's chief negotiator has said. Now, let's talk failure for a second, shall we? Failure as in the failure of the U.S. Constitution to stop these bastards, to stop these vultures, these opportunists, these bloodthirsty, warmongering genocide freaks, these propagandists who will tell you that Iran is the biggest propagator and supporter of terrorism. Meanwhile, they'll take $3.8 billion a year at least and send it to Israel, a genocide occupation state. You know, it's an interesting contrast. You know, the oil and the water, nary shall they mix, right? Well, I think thanks to the good people at RT, we get some good coverage of this. And I got to say, this is interesting because this 14-point document really does show, as the Iranians have said, and their foreign minister said, the agreement, quote, is a record of U.S. failure, just like the Constitution failed to hold these guys back. People will see it and judge. Tehran has argued that the document reflects a series of concessions by Washington. Absolutely right, including the lifting of U.S. naval blockade, sanctions waivers for Iranian oil exports. And again, these come fast and furious. Again, lifting of the U.S. naval blockade, sanctions waivers for Iranian oil exports, access to frozen Iranian funds, very important. JCPOA, anyone? And a U.S.-backed economic reconstruction plan worth at least $300 billion. And David Knight went through how important that is earlier today on the David Knight Show, if you get to see it. It was great. And he actually compared it to post-World War II reconstruction, which I thought was really interesting. And he adjusted it for inflation. So essentially, if that amount were put forward for the reconstruction in Europe, that would equal about $3 trillion. If you adjust for inflation. Washington has also agreed not to impose new sanctions or deploy additional forces in the region while both sides negotiate a final agreement. In response, Iran will, quote, make arrangements to restore freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, something that had not been an issue before the U.S.-Israeli attack. However, Tehran has signaled that the key waterway will not simply return to pre-war conditions. This is important, of course. I emphasize again, Kalibov said, that the Strait of Hormuz will never return to the previous conditions. Iran has the right to sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, we will receive a fee for services. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Emal Bagay added that a framework is being developed to manage the key waterway, with consultations already held with Oman, as outlined in the MOU. So just like we said, it's going to be Oman and Iran. Bagay, the foreign minister, and the president, of course, Ghalibaf, both saying the same lines, very consistent. They've held the same position. But what about Lebanon? That, I think, is very important. And so we're going to see a very interesting change of tenor, not necessarily a change of policy, from J.D. Vance, if you've been watching today, and Donald Trump, if you've been watching today. So let's head on over to some of the reaction to this from Max Blumenthal. As Max was on with the judge today, I have a couple segments I want to play of Max, as Max stressed this reality in this excellent conversation with Judge Napolitano.
Well, not everyone in Iran is actually celebrating. There's cautiousness about this deal. There's caution about the deal. But one thing is clear. Iran won. And I said this many weeks ago. Iran won within the first week. This is a major strategic victory for Iran. It is a defeat of U.S. empire that we have not seen possibly since in the entire post-war era. Possibly a more severe defeat than Vietnam, because the economic damage of Vietnam was largely contained, and this can't be.
Exactly. Now, we'll feature more of Max, of course, Max Blumenthal, the GrayZone, and inside the news notes, I feature an article that Max mentioned today on the Judge's Show, if you got to see it. Very, very interesting, and I think revealing article, as they always are at the GrayZone. And we'll talk about that. It has to do with Charlie Kirk, his assassination, and who now runs Turning Point USA, who now runs the Charlie Kirk Show and Turning Point USA. But to continue along the lines of who won and who lost, and this change of tenor, not necessarily a change of policy, we will see. Let's look at J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance is also promoting a book, so he'll be making a bunch of money off of the book while he's vice president, But hey, of course, as we all know, any of his appearances as vice president are completely disassociated with any of his appearances to promote his book. He'll tell us that. So, it's not as if he's promoting his book by saying, I'm not here to promote my book. By the way, did you know I have a book? I'm not here to promote it, though. Don't mind buying it if you want to. I'm not here to tell you that right now. I'll show up at the Burger King around the corner and talk about that. Well, J.D. Vance is promoting, you got it, the king of all MOUs. And in doing so, he's saying things that don't comport with earlier statements he has made. This new position, including speaking positively about lifting the blockade, promoting the idea of Iran getting reparations somehow, Iran having mutual control over the strait along with Oman, and Iran being able to generate nuclear energy through a now low-level enrichment process. As we said, they're probably going to allow pretty much what they allowed with the JCPOA that Donald Trump said is really bad. So Iran's getting more. Not only are they going to get back all the money that was being held after 1979, they're going to get $300 billion more from various Middle Eastern states. They'll have sanctions lifted. U.S. bases will be removed. And the one contingent big hitch is they're going to be trying to get work to stop the Israelis from attacking Lebanon and Gaza anymore. So that's very interesting. Iran, and of course, they're going to be able to control the strait along with Oman. And Iran will be able to generate nuclear energy through a low-level enrichment process. These were not in his favorable category even a week ago. Remember that? Now he's standing against Israel, continuing its aggression in southern Lebanon, at least rhetorically. It's mostly lip service, as I mentioned. It's not backed by any statement that U.S. aid to Israel should end. And that's part of the promotion of the Memorandum of Understanding, which Vance now is saying Israel ought to get behind. So this presents a question. When one is a, say, sheep who cannot trust the wolf, or that cannot trust the wolf, be the wolf in sheep's clothing or not, and the wolf suddenly speaks up against the farmer coming to kill some of your sheep kin, how does one assess the relationship with the already proven deadly and deceitful wolf? So here's Trita Parsi, who of course is being targeted by Marco Rubio because he spoke up for peace. Trita Parsi's got this one that I didn't have to amplify. J.D. Vance to Israel opposing the MOU. My response to them would be, what is your exact proposal? You're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have. So let me get this straight. What's the difference between now and how you were saying before the administration was saying it, and you were pushing this, and you actually helped cast votes to make sure that the weaponry and money went to Israel to continue doing what you just said here? You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem. Or are those different national security problems? Those would be national security problems against completely disarmed, corralled, starving people in Gaza. I guess that's the difference. Maybe the difference is that this has a blowback effect the way the starving people in Gaza can't have a blowback effect to stop the flow of oil and increase the prices for everything and decrease the supplies of things like helium and all sorts of other things. Maybe, just maybe, attacking Iran was tactically something that you're realizing was a really bad idea, but morally, you still don't get it. I don't see any moral bones in any of these people. Here's what JD had to say.
But yeah, you've seen people in their system, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who've attacked the deal. And I guess my response to them would be, what is your exact proposal? And, you know, you're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have. Look at what, but yeah, you've seen people in their system, Ben-Gvir and
okay, you can't just kill your way out of every national security problem you have. Remind me to mention that to J.D. Vance when I go back in time and, you know, they attacked the nuclear energy facilities about a year ago at this time in Iran, because, you know, he might want to have listened to his future self. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? I thought that was a big success. I thought that's, you know, I thought using that kinetic activity to kill people and possibly send nuclear dust up into the air was going to solve all the problems. And yet it somehow didn't, and they kept going. Well, this is interesting. Since in the statement, Vance pretty much here admits that the world shuns the actions of Israel, but then he doesn't take the next step to ask why. So let me give you some of this information here. I think you might find this interesting, as we have a couple examples of this man doing his thing. Now, I've got some material from RT that I've recorded live. I actually recorded it live at his press conference, but I want to go to this one. I believe DropSite put this out. Yep. Check this out. Now, in this, you'll see DropSite quotes him, as in Queens of the Stone Age, quotes her. They have here, J.D. Vance says, Donald Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who's sympathetic to the nation of Israel, says J.D. Vance. So again, I ask this question. Doesn't Vance pretty much admit that the world shuns the actions of Israel? So is he asking why the United States is the only country that is backing Israel? There seems to be a disconnect there. Let's get back to it. Here we go. Check it out now, a funk soul brother.
What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal, and in some ways very personally attacked the president of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower.
He happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. Okay, now that was one from JD. Then we've got this from Megatron. Vice President JD Vance has had enough and threatens Israel. Quote, if I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally I have left. Again, is anybody in the room saying, JD, why are you saying that America is the only ally, and why are you including me as a friend of Israel? I thought this was the land of the free. Let's go over to this. We had to amplify this a little bit for you because it was pretty low. Here we go.
What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal and in some ways very personally attacked the president of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members, Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the president of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. Thank you all.
So here's, again, a philosophical question. He blithely mentions that the defense there was paid for by the taxpayers of the United States, right? Did he have a problem with the taxpayers of the United States blowing kids up and blowing them in half? I want to show you something. And this is not good to watch, but I want to show you something. This actually, I don't think is circulating on X anymore. I think they removed it, but I do believe I've still got it. Let's see if I can find this. Yeah. Okay. I think I can get it here. Let me just check here. Yeah. Now, this is, some of you might not want to watch this, okay? This is some of what the American tax money has purchased. I'm not going to... Actually, I will play the audio. Here we go. So JD, sure is good you're talking now, right? I don't know. It's all contingent. It's all transactional. It all depends on the outcome, not the morality of it, Mr. Christian. Now, Trump is taking a similar tack as J.D. Vance, revising his words, levering the U.S. power over Israel, and he will not acknowledge that the U.S. is not supposed to be supporting any nation state, especially the Zionist occupation state that is doing stuff like that. Ryan Rosbiani has this: Trump humiliates Netanyahu at the G7 press conference after the Iran Memorandum of Understanding defiance. Quote, "We're the big partner and he's the very small partner." So you'll see this. And Trump, of course, says that we're the big guys, they're the small guys, and here we go.
But it's been an amazing partnership. But he will say, we're the big partner, and he's the very small partner, and that's true. So happened, Israel would have been blown away. And in all fairness to Bibi Netanyahu, who happens to be a good man, gets a little excited sometimes. But he happens to be a very good man. We've had an amazing partnership. He's been an amazing prime minister. We have a little dispute over Lebanon. I say, you can do a little softer touch, Bibi.
A little softer touch. A little softer touch of what? Occupation and land grabs? What are you talking about, dude? These euphemisms, how is it they can play with the language with such frivolity? These are people's homes. These are their lives. This is supposed to be international border action where these borders are respected. And as we said, the vast majority of armaments are not flowing from Hezbollah into Israel. They're Israeli-launched, U.S.-provided arms, as Mr. Vance noted. So in all of this wrap-up to all this stuff, the United States is confirming everything that we already know, and they're explicitly saying, we have been providing all these things to Israel, and now they're showing that they don't appreciate this stuff. So what have they been providing? They've been providing the means, the technology, the money, the arms to kill people and take land. That's what they've been providing. It's not a defense against Iran. It's not a defense against Hezbollah. It's not a defense against Hamas. It's an offense from a cancerous Zionist occupation state that has its tentacles deeply wound into the United States governmental system that these people don't care to regard. And that's it. That's just a statement of fact. There's no disputing it. You can't say, well, you know, Hezbollah is really at fault here. Oh, really? Really? Is that the case? Have you looked at the arms that are going back and forth? Have you looked at the people who have ancestors in the area and where the state of Israel came from? Or are you going to be like Mike Huckabee and make it up like it's romper room? I see the Old Testament. I don't see the New Testament. I see a different kind of funky, weird kind of Bible. I see dispensationalism. Hi, let's pretend. Well, Chris Rossini offers key thoughts about the Iranian strength to shut down energy and supplies and the importance and the need for free markets, as he was on with Ron Paul today on the Ron Paul Liberty Report. So we're going to hear from Chris. And we're going to hear from Ron Paul. So let me get to it right here. Here's Chris and Ron Paul. Here we go.
The president has said some things that are indicated, that there's an economic catastrophe out there. And it came up pretty fast. But that is a sign the American people are and should wake up.
That's right, Dr. Paul. And yes, we have to stress, as we do our criticisms here, that peace is a win. That part is a win. We no longer have to watch innocents die, threats of obliterating civilizations. Our country killed 150 schoolgirls over there. As long as that's stopping, we have to be happy. But now we have to also criticize, because we have gone full circle from Iran not making nuclear weapons to Iran not making nuclear weapons and getting tons of money on top of it. Because for decades before this, the Iranian leaders have been saying we do not want nuclear weapons, and they just kept getting sanctioned by the U.S. The Ayatollah made a fatwa, a religious decree that is against Islam. Iran does not want a nuclear weapon. Well, the U.S. killed that Ayatollah. Before this started, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, said the intelligence community continues to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. Tulsi is gone. This was going to happen no matter what anybody said and no matter what proof there was. They were going to bomb Iran, and that's exactly what they did. And Iran has proved that they don't need a nuclear weapon. Closing the Strait of Hormuz is their nuclear weapon. It imposed costs that the president is now admitting to, that we're going to run out of oil. and there's endless supply of missiles that they have.
Now, let's just recall that it was only a week ago that the Trump administration and people like Scott Bessent and Kevin Hassett and others, whether they be on the energy side or they be on the economic side, continually told us in almost a ceaseless stream of lyrical drivel that the United States was all set with energy. Everything was great for the U.S. energy. We're not going to be short at all. There's no shortage. And what does Trump finally admit? What everybody knew. Again, we were discussing this with Tony. It's a worldwide resource. So obviously, if it's demanded all around the world, it doesn't matter whether you're producing it in the United States. It will be bid to other places if they're willing to bid high enough. The only way you could stop it is with legal export controls, and then some of it will sneak out in the black market. So, I mean, it was just absurd. And then Trump finally admitted it, just like Chris Rossini said. Yeah, Trump is finally seeing it. But all of these are contingencies that are based not on ethics or morals or the Constitution. They're based on outcomes. Their philosophy is not based on rights and negative reciprocity in the golden rule. Their philosophy is utilitarian. It's consequentialist philosophy. It just depends on whatever it is that they think the outcome might be that could actually be detrimental to them. That's why they change. That's why they're doing these things. That's what it's all about. Now, let me show you what's going on. Meanwhile, Israel, as we showed in our billboard, Israel's ramping up attacks in Lebanon. As we see, drop site, 3 people have been killed and 2 others wounded in Israeli drone strikes across southern Lebanon on Thursday, according to Lebanon's national news agency. 2 men were killed when an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle in the town of Fartnibit near Nabatea in southern Lebanon. Now, that is happening, of course, while they are pushing the Iranian government to the point of having to announce that the memorandum of understanding is at risk because of the Israeli attacks. So here's the Hormuz letter. This is what the Israelis are saying. Breaking. Iran warns of canceling all upcoming negotiations, reimposing the full Hormuz blockade, and responding with missiles over the direct violation of the U.S.-Iran's MOU first clause, which Israel continuing military aggressions in southern Lebanon, including last night, despite explicit commitment from the first clause of the MOU to end the war and guarantee Lebanese sovereignty, per the Tasman news agency. And Iran explicitly rejects any, quote, theater from Trump about Netanyahu being rogue. And now Friday's Geneva meeting to launch the first round of 30-day technical talks between Vance and Galibaf is on hold over the violation, as no trip has been confirmed or scheduled just 24 hours after the MOU was electronically signed. So, as we thought, the Israelis are that, as Jeffrey Pye had said, they are that unpredictable electron, uncontrollable electron. Well, a lot of people are happy about what Israel's doing, one of them being Zionista Mark Levin, who hints that using nuclear weapons on Iranians would be a really good idea. Yeah, okay, if you say so, Marco. Here we go, Mr. Levin and his radio show.
I strongly disagree with something the president said today. I heard him say one other time, too, which is if we hadn't attacked Iran, Israel would not exist. It would have been destroyed. That's simply not true. It's simply not true. For 12 days, Israel fought a year ago against the Iranian regime before we did. Destroyed its ground.
This guy's amazing. Does he have any concept of how we slaves are being forced to pay for the Israeli armaments? What Israel uses for telemetry and technology in order to attack Iran? It's unbelievable. I mean, that's such an egregious lapse that he knows he's not given the full truth.
Ground-to-air missiles, destroyed its Soviet and /Russian radar systems.
Astounding. Absolutely amazing. This after a guy like Mark Levin worked in government when the United States was working with the Iraqis to give them chemical precursors to using chemical weapons against Iran. That's Mark Levin. What a class act that dude is, huh? Wow. In the meantime, this will show you what Donald Trump actually thinks about morality. So this one comes to us from Michael the Libertarian. You can't just effing yada yada over murdering 150 schoolgirls, you demon. Oh my God, as he says. So here we go.
A fault, and as you know, that's under investigation. It's such a strange question to be asked at this state. Because you're talking about a long time ago, but nobody did.
Talking about a long time ago. And Witkoff shakes his head. Oh, yeah, I can't believe they'd do something like that. I mean, Lucky Lutnick. Yeah, if they were only, in one of the towers, maybe you could have not shown up at the school too, Mr. Lutnick. So it's a pretty basic question. What about an investigation? Are we going to get some results on that? It's fairly obvious. The United States did a double tap on that school in the Litani region. I mean, in the Lahani region of Iran, right? And yet Donald Trump's like, oh, that was a long time ago. Oh, really? It was a long time ago. That wasn't a long time ago. And even if it were a long time ago, does that mean anything? You are responsible for all those deaths, as well as all the other people who followed your orders.
Did that on purpose. I guess you'd have.
They didn't do it on purpose. So let me get this straight. If the president orders attacks without a declaration of war and people follow his orders, what are they doing? Oh, that's right. They're engaging in voluntary activity. That means it's purposeful. It's not like somebody leaned against a table and something launched. That would be accidental.
I have to say about them, what about the thousands of soldiers that they blew up when they opened their car door? What about the thousands of...
What's he talking about? The Iranians were not involved with the attack on the barracks in Beirut during the Reagan administration. That wasn't the Iranians. And how about the fact that the Americans aren't supposed to be there or anywhere else during a time of non-declared war? How about just within the American standard, people might want to remember all that stuff?
People that were killed by Iran. No, mistakes are made. The war is nasty.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to use the passive voice. Mistakes are made. You should just expect that. The mistakes are made. And of course, Mr. Trump still supports the Zionist occupation, genocide, apartheid state. Curiously, Kaja Gugu Kallas just criticized Israel for its apartheid. So, of course, we get to see this irony. The Israeli foreign minister just announced he is no longer talking to the EU foreign minister the way you do in the 7th grade when you're mad at your friend, all because she said the same thing that Netanyahu's former Mossad chief said the month before the October 7th attack. That's right. She said that, you got it. It was an apartheid state. So here's what he doesn't like this. He says, the foreign minister has for some time now been acting obsessively with blatant unfairness toward the state of Israel, the foreign minister of the EU. Recently, it was published that during her visit to Mexico, she compared Israel to the racist apartheid regime that existed in South Africa. Wow. Oh, seriously? So I just happen to note myself on this, that, she's undercutting all of that. As I noted, I said, heck, that's downplaying the genocide. So he should feel fortunate that she overlooked the bigger reality. Wow. And again, just to give you some feedback as to what's going on in Gaza, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, 2 Palestinians were killed and 8 others wounded in Israeli attacks across the Gaza Strip over the past 24 hours. Now, I want to go into something else that I think is pretty big before we switch over to Ukraine, Russia. And this has to do with Israeli influence inside the United States and the Charlie Kirk assassination. Now, a lot of people have become familiar over the past few weeks with this term Salem media, and who actually runs a lot of these popular Zionist, semi-neocon, new media talk shows, the Dave Rubins of the world, that sort of thing, right? Well, Salem Media took over the Charlie Kirk show, and this is a very interesting article about it at the GrayZone. You'll see here, Israeli foreign agent who runs Salem Media now took over the Charlie Kirk show days after Charlie Kirk was killed, literally 8 days afterwards. On September 10th, 2025, Kirk was assassinated during the first stop on his American comeback tour in Utah Valley State University. 8 days later, we see someone here named Brad Parscale, and he registered as a foreign agent of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, assuming responsibility for a propaganda blitz tailored to Gen Z audiences across platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and other relevant digital and broadcast outlets. What's interesting is it's a $46 million annual contract between the Israeli government and Brad Parscale, the former chief of staff for Donald Trump's 2020 presidential campaign. So let me give you some of the information here from none other than Max Blumenthal, who wrote the article.
But what became of Turning Point within days of Charlie Kirk's murder?
Well, I just published a piece about a story. I just thought it was a huge story that hadn't really been written about or covered anywhere, even in alternative media, although it's been discussed on social media a lot, which is that the Charlie Kirk show is now distributed by a foreign agent for Israel. And this deal went through 8 days after he was killed. Now, I'm not pointing to that deal as evidence that Israel killed him. I have no evidence of that. But it really tells you a lot about the political environment we're in and what has happened to MAGA, particularly since Charlie Kirk was killed. Salem Media distributed the Charlie Kirk show since 2020. Salem Media was brought in on one of the biggest lobbying contracts for a foreign agent in history, probably the biggest, with Brad Parscale, who is Donald Trump's former chief of staff, and his Clock Tower X company. The Israeli Foreign Ministry contracted them to buy influencers, cater to Gen Z, cater to conservatives, cultivate support for Christian Zionism in the U.S. through geofencing of churches.
Is Brad an actual registered agent of the government of Israel?
So an actual federally registered foreign agent of the government of Israel, Brad Parscale, became chief strategy officer of Salem Media, which is in charge of distributing the Charlie Kirk show. Would Charlie Kirk have supported that deal?
Oh, absolutely not.
Based on his public statements in which he was agonizing over all the pressure from Israel lobbyists and saying, hey, I support my country, not Israel. He said this on August 8th, 2025, about a month before his death on the Megyn Kelly show. He called Lindsey Graham pathologically insane for wanting to attack Iran. Probably not. But now Charlie Kirk is dead. And thanks to his untimely death, TPUSA has fallen back in line with the Israeli agenda. Erica Kirk, in the new CEO and replacement for Charlie Kirk, claimed in a cringeworthy town hall with self-described Zionist fanatic Bari Weiss on CBS, which had just been purchased by Israel First billionaire David Ellison, that her and Charlie always supported Israel because they went there and saw the Bible come alive in Technicolor. And how could you not like a state like Israel? That did not reflect Charlie Kirk's views. She was asked, what would Charlie Kirk think about the war in Iran? And she said, well, we don't know what he would think. And, I wish you were here. And his former Confederates at TPUSA even put out a video 4 days after Trump launched Operation Epic Fury, an old video of Charlie Kirk, the old Charlie Kirk, saying that Iran was like a horrible country, which didn't reflect his evolution. So they're deliberately burying Charlie Kirk's evolving views, his real legacy, his kind of emerging anti-war persona. And we have to really wonder, what would have happened if Donald Trump tried to launch this war with Charlie Kirk leading the major MAGA youth organization and Get Out the Vote organization? He would have been a much more, he would have been a bigger obstacle than Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, comic Dave Smith combined. And so it was very convenient to have him out of the way. And again, I'm not saying that that explains who killed him, but it explains what has happened to MAGA since September 10th, 2025, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated.
Good stuff from Max. And I want to turn over to that piece again, just to reiterate, if you go to the GrayZone, and this is linked inside my news notes again. So this is what it looks like if you check it out now, Funk Soul Brother. Again, Israeli foreign agent took over the Charlie Kirk show days after his killing. Charlie Kirk's media empire and his right-wing activist organization, Turning Point USA, have come under the control of the Israel-directed forces he spent the last months of his life antagonizing. Erica Kirk now claims her husband supported Israel to the end, while TPUSA misrepresents his opposition to the war on Iran. The Charlie Kirk Show is now distributed by a federally registered agent of Israel, tasked with seeding American media with Zionist propaganda. It is part of a whopping $46 million annual contract between the Israeli government and Brad Parscale, the former chief of staff for Donald Trump's 2020 presidential campaign. This may be the largest lobbying contract in the history of foreign influence operations in the U.S. And I think a lot of people don't even believe it because it's so big. On September 10th, 2025, Kirk was assassinated during the first stop of his American comeback tour at Utah Valley State University. 8 days later, Parscale registered as a foreign agent of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, assuming responsibility for a propaganda blitz tailored, quote, to Gen Z audiences across platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and other relevant digital and broadcast outlets, end quote. The deal meant that the Charlie Kirk Show, which had been distributed by the Salem Media Network since 2020, was placed under the control of a foreign agent for Israel, with Parscale assuming a role as Salem's chief strategy officer. According to the terms of the contract, Parscale's clock tower would, quote, integrate its pro-Israel message into Salem Media Network properties, end quote. According to a December 2025 report by Radio Inc., the Charlie Kirk Show, quote, will continue as a podcast on the Salem Podcast Network, as Salem Media, quote, will maintain its close professional and personal relationship with Turning Point USA, end quote. Since Kirk's killing, his successors have done their best to bury his vehement opposition to war on Iran, as well as his public fits of disgust with Netanyahu and his army of lobbyists in the U.S. Kirk's widow and replacement for TPUSA CEO, Erica Kirk, now insists that she and her husband never wavered in their support for Israel. She has also been unwilling to state that her late husband would have thought what her late husband would have thought about the war the U.S. and Israel waged on Iran this year. So that is a quick wrap up. You can find that linked over at my news notes. And of course, if you want to just check out the judge's show over on the YouTube channel, really, really great stuff from the judge.